Hey guys, thanks for tuning into the channel. In this video, I'm going to be putting a FASS fuel system onto my 7.3 liter Ford Powerstroke diesel engine. And another snowy day here in Colorado. It's April 20th and it's 18 degrees and snowing. I can't wait. One of these days it's going to warm up here, really getting old. But the reason I'm doing it is the contamination of the fuel. With dirt, dissolved water, moisture into the fuel, and also air from air circulating back through the return lines and then sloshing around with the diesel fuel. So anyway, the FASS fuel system will take all that out. I am not by no means endorsed by FASS. I didn't get a dime from them to do this. This is all on my own nickel. But I looked at different fuel filter systems out there. The two big ones are FASS and the other one's Airdog. I'm probably going to get some comments on this video on the Airdog. I'm not using it, but anyway, I like Steve Purnell on Welder Up Garage and also DeBoss Garage up in Canada. Rich swears by FASS. So I figured almost for the same money, I'll just go with the FASS system. And I did come across this quick video on comparison side by side. I think Steve Darnell did it at SEMA. So that was quite interesting. So let's cut to that video. And
there we go. I mean, you can already see like the difference in the clarity, you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Like I can see the all-thread rod. I can't even see the all-thread rod in that one.
Yeah, it's still going to be extremely cloudy. It's if any, it's not going to remove any of that water at all.
No.
You can see a little bit of air came up, going to rise to the top. Once that air is completely separated.
Well, even with the air in it, you can already see.
So I got the box in yesterday. FedEx delivered it, and I am putting in the Titanium Signature Series FASS fuel system. So it has the lift pump, and it has the filters, and water separator and air separator. The neat thing about this unit is that even when it's not drawing fuel into the fuel bowl of the motor, it's actually scrubbing the fuel, so it's constantly circulating the fuel from the tank back into the return line into the tank, and basically scrubbing it, they call it, but filtering the fuel, taking the moisture out, the water, and then also separating all the air out of it. And then the really cool thing is that it's designed, machined, and assembled in the good old USA. And the model number I am doing right now, and this is an entry-level fuel pump. I don't have my truck hot rodded or anything where I need super flow, is the TS F14 140G. And this is good for Ford 99 through 2007 Powerstroke 7.3 liter turbo diesel. So this video would most likely apply the lift pump that's in there right now. Might be a little bit different as the newer models came out, but pretty much the concept's the same. But in the box, you get a bunch of fittings. And I searched high and low on the interweb, on YouTube, to try to find a video that showed me how to install this, and I could not find one anywhere. The closest thing I came to is three guys out in some pasture with a camera jerking around, only showing a couple things on how to put it in, which didn't work for me. So I'm gonna do this video, and even the FASS guys said when you're done, send them a copy so they can promote it. But here's all my different fittings. In a nutshell, I have a wiring harness that I'm gonna put in. I'm gonna do that first. That's easy to do. Connection to the battery, and then connection to a key on fuse. And that'll put power to the pump. Plenty enough cable to run back to the fuel pump. And then I need to take the diesel tank out, and then drill the top for the suction and the return, because I'm going to bypass the original factory one. It's just small, like 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch line. So to replace it, this is going to be the suction tube that goes down into the tank. And then here's my bypass fittings for my existing fuel pump. So it shouldn't be that bad, but anyway, let's get the harness in first, and then I'll take it to my other shop, put it up on the lift, and I need to take the skid plate out on it, and then also drop that tank out, which I needed to do anyway. I want to make sure it's okay. It's 22 years old, make sure there's no crud in the bottom and that sort of thing. So let's get to it. So we need to prep the wiring harness, and they give you some of the components. So this is going to be, it looks like an octopus. So you got 3 lines coming off of this connector. The relay is going to go into here, and then they have like a little cover that goes on top. And then on the end of this wire, this is going to connect to your battery. So they gave you a couple ring connectors to put on here. So you need to strip these, put the ring connectors on, which I'll do in a bit. And I like using the grease compound, joint compound on the connections. I'll crimp them and then I'll put some heat shrink. And then definitely do not forget this, but this is an inline fuse. And pull this off. And they do supply you a 30 amp fuse. So I'll put some dielectric grease on here, like so. And you can pick this stuff up at like Home Depot. I use it on all my electrical connections. Put a little dab on the contacts. And then that's going to go into the fuse holder. There we go. And then put the cap back on, make sure the little indents lined up there. Push that on, good to go. So next thing is to get the ring connectors on here. This other wire here is going to go on to this add-a fuse, and what this does is you can pull out one of your fuses out of the fuse block, put this in, and then add your fuse that was there on the inside, and then on the outside is the fuse that we're adding, the 3 amp little purple one that they give you. So I'll put some grease on that, and I'm going to go into time warp on this, but this always goes into the outside connector here like so. And then your original fuse you're going to pull out, it's going to go on the inside, and then that's going to go in the fuse block. And that's going to be for your switch power. So when your key comes on the truck, you're activating, closing a relay here, which ties to the battery, and then basically the fuel pump comes on. So pretty straightforward here. But make sure you put the 3 amp on the outside of the line here, and then your existing fuse you're going to pull out, and this is going to take the place of it, put that on the inside. All right, both connections are done and labeled. Fuel pump, power, ground, and here's my relay. Don't forget to put the 30 amp fuse in. And I routed the cable around underneath the air cleaner. There wasn't enough room on the driver's side to do it, so I routed it around there, put some zip ties on there. Comes up, and then my relay unit that I showed you, putting the cover over it, so the relay is actually stuffed up into this rubber cover with my cables coming out. And then there was a ground screw right up here that worked perfect to mount that tab for the fuel relay, pump relay, right in there. So that was great. So the next thing is I need to do my fuse tap into keyed power, and that'll wrap up the electrical, and I'll run my wire to the fuel pump down through here and out the frame in the bottom. So all the electrical will be done, and it's time for plumbing. But the fuse panel is on the driver's side, up underneath the brake pedal, that sort of thing. So what I'm gonna do is, I had to inside here there's like a piece of plastic, it goes through the firewall, and I got some wires running through, and I found I had to drill another little hole right there, if you could see that. And then I'm going to put my red wire, my keyed power, and then tap the fuse block on the other side, which I know for sure has keyed power. So let me get this wire through here, and let's get it connected. So the fuse block underneath the panel here, my tap of fuse, I basically went with the 10 amp fuse. It was in this location, so you got the green, 5 amp, the 10 amp, and then the next one is where I found my power, right there. So I'm going to button this up and get this truck up on the lift, pull the tank, and it's time for plumbing. All right, got the truck up on the lift in my other shop, and the next thing you're going to want to do is drain the fuel bowl. It's up in the motor, so I'm up on the lift right now. And you should be doing this every few months. It's a water separator. So on the passenger side of the truck, I'll get a light up in here, you'll see where the drain tube is. And it's just kind of a crappy design that Ford did, but right up here in the passenger side in the front of the motor, you'll see this tube come down here. It's like a 1/4 inch brake line tube, and it just stops like right here where my finger's at. So when you go to basically drain the water out of your fuel bowl, which you should be doing every few months, it just pees out onto the cross member of the motor, and it's just crappy that they didn't extend it down further. So if you take a piece of 5/16 inch fuel line or whatever you might have laying around, and then put a clamp on it, which is what I did to extend it down, and you could even make this longer, and then put a bottle on there, but that way it's not peeing all over the cross member, and it'll just come out the end of this tube. So a couple pints that'll drain out of there and get that drained. The next thing is drain the fuel tank as best as you can with a siphon hose, or run the fuel out if your pump's still working. But if you're replacing the pump that went bad, naturally you're gonna have to siphon it out with a siphon hose, all the diesel fuel out of the tank. And I think I hold about 35 gallons. So I'm gonna do that next. So you need to take this cover off. All this is 2 little like nuts that go on here, plastic nuts. Just unthread those, take the cover off, and move my light here. And on the back of the fuel bowl, this is a fuel bowl where you should be changing your fuel filter, is a lever right here. And what you're going to do is flip that around like that, and you should hear it start to drain. Here, going down into my tub. Let that drain down all the way. And again, you should be doing this every few months. It's a water separator also. It'll take the water off the bottom of the fuel bowl. So here's the existing fuel pump. It's been in there since 1998. What's that make it, like 22 years old? And pretty straightforward. Here's the fuel coming in, fuel going out. And this is the 7.3 Powerstroke, and it's the older one, 98 through 2002, I believe, or 99 through 2002. And the Powerstroke, the 6.0, the kit that I have is for that also, which will take you 2003 through, I believe it's 2007. That's a different fuel pump on it, where the return lines come into the fuel pump. Since this is an older one, my return line is right on the bottom here, and I don't need to bypass that at all. But on the 6.0, what you'll need to do is they give you 2 little plug-in connectors and a piece of hose, and what you'll do is just splice into it and bypass the pump. But since I have the older one, I don't need to do that. I just have fuel in and fuel out. So I think what I'm going to do is take this little clip off right here, pop that off, pop that fitting off. I'm going to put a piece of just nylon hose, I think it's like 3/8 I got from Home Depot. I'm going to stick it on the end of that and run the fuel pump to make sure all the fuel's out of the tank before I take it out. And then after that, I have a skid plate on my tank, and this plastic steel skid plate. It has a couple straps. I'll get the impact and undo those. 2 on the front, 2 on the back for the skid plate here. And then I'll have access to the fuel tank and fuel lines. All right, so how this clip works on here is it kind of rotates. So it's got a prong that goes in to hold the fitting in tight against the seal. But the back end of this, I don't know if you can see this or not, rotates up. And then you slide it forward, and these 2 little teeth in the front come out. And that's kind of how it works. So I'll push that off, and then they give you a new fitting to go into the new fuel line. So we're going to use the existing fuel line going up to the fuel bowl. That stays intact, and the hose is going to come off, go into the fitting that they provide, and then plug right onto here. And then the old 22-year-old fuel pump gets removed. So next thing is to loosen this up so I can slide that fitting out. Is there's a 7mm like bolt that's like a clamp that clamps the fuel pump in, so I'll be able to slide it, and behind here's rubber on that deal. So that should come out of here. And then on the other side, if you take the bracket out, I think I'll just leave the bracket in, but these are 12mm nuts, and I got some PB blaster on there ready to go. So I'm going to get that bracket off, slide it back, get that fuel line off, and that'll take care of that. So what you're going to need too to release this is one of these release tools that goes around the line, and then if you can see that pushes in the inside here and releases a spring clip. So you could pick these up. This is like a universal one that I got. Been using it for years for air conditioning lines and fuel lines. But go to your local parts store. They have little plastic ones you could buy, and then get up in there and get that fuel line off. All right, the skid plate's off. That thing is heavy. And what I did is put a couple 2x4s across my lift here so it wouldn't come crashing to the ground when I took the last bolt out. And next is to do these 2 bolts on this side on the tank straps, and this side has a pivot on it. So this whole tank should just pivot down, and then I can get to the fittings on top. So let's give it a shot. So next, go under the driver's side rear wheel, and you'll see the filler hoses going to the fuel. And you want to take off the 2 hose clamps here, take off the main fill line, rubber hose, dig a screwdriver down in or loosen it up and pry that off. And then this is the vent line, get that off. And that should just drop right down out of there, and then disconnect the fuel line and return line off the top of the sender unit and the wire harness. And that should be it. Tank tilted down, the fuel line's pried off with a screwdriver from the other side, then it released. Here's my my sending unit for my fuel gauge. Looks like I need to unplug it up top. And then same thing, take the clips off here along with that little puller device I used for the front pump. And then the return and the fuel suction line will come right off. And then this tank is ready to come out of here. All right, so I got the fuel tank in my other shop, and mine has a plastic shield that goes around it. And I'm gonna have to trim this out a little bit, and that's where I'm gonna have my new suction and return tube that goes down into the tank. And then as soon as I trim that out, blow this all off, and then I'll take the cap off so I can get 1 3/8 inch hole down in through the tank for the new pickup tube. So this is going to be the unit that I'm going to have to drill a hole 1 3/8, put it down into the tank. Suction tube goes onto the bottom of this. So this is the PL1010 that goes into the S port, and I'm assuming that stands for suction, S. I need to put some Teflon tape on it. And then I have the PL1004 that goes into R, which is the return, which is the smaller diameter hose. So get some Teflon tape on here. And when you put Teflon tape, always go in the direction of the thread. So it's right-handed thread, so you want the tape to go to the right so it grips on when you tighten it. And a good rule of thumb is to go around 3 times. Okay, this goes into the suction side, S. Like so. And then the smaller diameter hose goes onto the R for return. And I'll go get some wrenches and get this tightened up. So what I'm going to do is use a spray can top to catch any debris that's coming down in here. and the hole's going to be going right about there. Far enough away, it's about 1.5 inches over. And this flat spot right in here should give it a good seal. Here goes nothing. All right, go get my vacuum cleaner. All right, everything fits good. So next I need to take and measure the length of this tube. And it's supposed to be about 1/8 inch off the bottom, which is far better than the factory one because there's still a lot of fuel in here. So what I'll do is you put 2 quarters, stack them, and that's about the thickness that you want off of the bottom of the fuel tank. So next thing is to push this on. I'll put some oil on here, get that on there, and then I'll cut, and then cut it a little bit long, and then I'll just sand it down a little bit until I get the right distance off the bottom. All right, it's in, tightened up. I'm going to trim this fiberglass out just around this hose fitting here a little bit more. Get everything put back together. When you put this fuel sending unit, make sure that the swing arm, the float arm, is not interfering with the suction tube on the new pickup. Next step is to push the hose on to the fittings. And I don't know if I need some oil on there or not. Yeah, I'm going to put some oil on here. Here we go. And this is a suction line, so it's not under any high pressure or anything. All right, the fuel tank's back in. Boy, that was an enjoyable process, getting the straps to line up and stuff. But fortunately, I have a movable trolley on my lift that I can put a bottle jack on and lift up. But tank is in. One note that you want to do is make sure you're not pinching the hoses. Don't cut this hose because we don't know the length, and a lot of the hose are going to be running inside the frame rail up to the fuel pump connector up there. So also to put your hoses over top of the frame rail, if I can get a shot of that, and tape up the ends because you're dealing with a lot of crud and dirt, and just try to minimize the amount of dirt going up into the pipes. Next is getting that skid plate back on, and then I'm pretty much done. Mount the fuel filter pump up inside here and plumb it up and hook up the power, and that's going to be it. All right, got the plumbing done, got the electrical done, ready to go. I'm in the home stretch here, so got some benchtop work to do here. So here's how this lays out. This fitting here needs to go in. This is going to be to the engine. I guess it's a pressure regulator down in here. And then if you unscrew this plug, that's going to be your pressure port to a gauge, say on your dash. But so this big fitting right here, it already has Teflon on it, so you don't need to tape it. That goes on there, I would think. And then a press fit hose fitting, which goes on the end of the hose once I cut it. That's going to go on there, like so. And the fuel inlet is going to be on this side, and you don't want to bend this pipe, so when you go to bear down on it, tighten fittings, don't have it pushing on this pipe. It goes down in the filter. So this elbow already has a Teflon on it. It's going to go in here like so. Get all this tightened up, and then this is the big size press-on fitting for the big hose, and that's going to be to the tank like so. And that's going to be it. And then On the return line, you're going to press this onto the small hose, and that's going to go on here. This is the return. All right, so engine, return, fuel tank. Next thing you're going to do, put this mounting plate on here like this, so it goes away from the fuel inlet on this side, and it's got these little 10mm bolts. And there's going to be spacers in here, that way you can get behind here with these bolts, and then that's going to go on the slide. It's going to mount up into the bed and give you full adjustability up and down and sideways, which is pretty cool. So I got my bracket mounted, and the instructions call to use this outside hole, but that makes the whole unit go too far to the right. So what I did is the little strap metal with the nut welded on it that slides up into that channel for the bed. I chopped off about 1.5 inches on one end so I can meet this undulation where it kind of is pressed down a little bit in the metal, and mounted a bracket on this side. That way my fuel pump's as far to the frame rail as possible in case I get hit from the side for some reason. It's going to give some extra protection to the fuel system. But I have to be careful because I'm on the side of the emergency brake here, so I'll make sure to put the head side of the bolt on that side and use the nut side towards the inside of the fuel filter. So next thing is to get this thing mounted up in here. All right, the filter pump assembly is mounted. Perfect location, away from the edge of the body, tucked up next to the frame. And I don't know if you can see that, but I have plenty of clearance for the emergency brake and the bolt heads inside there. So this is one heavy unit to get up in there though, boy. Very well built. So next thing is to cut my hoses to length, put the press fit fittings on, and then tighten everything up and then prime it with WD-40. So another tip, once you take the tape off, put your lips on there and blow a little bit of air through the suction tube from the tank. Make sure that there's no pinched lines when you were putting the tank up. You didn't pinch the line or anything, and it's nice airflow. Same thing on the return line. And I like also, it's about 38 degrees here right now in Colorado, mid-April. Wish it'd warm up one of these days. But I like using the heat gun on the silicone, get it all good and warmed up. Again, put motor oil on the fitting on the inside of the tube and on the outside, and then heat it up really good, the silicone. Makes it a whole lot easier to slide on, especially when it's colder out. Got the old fuel pump out. It basically just slides out of here. You need to disconnect your positive and negative wires, which you're not going to be using anymore. Make sure you tape those off real good, in case in the future somebody wants to revert back to stock, which is kind of crazy, but anyway. Okay, so this is the Bosch fuel pump. You see it's not that big. My hands aren't that big, but this little guy pumped its heart out, 118,000 miles since 1998 when it was installed and built into the truck. So on the suction end going to the tank, which is this inlet here, that's the part that has a little plastic clip that I just showed you on how to remove it earlier. But I talked to FASS, and they said basically just leave that line hang, put a piece of tape on the end, but I'm thinking this inlet is lower than the top of my fuel tank by like 5-6 inches. And there's no check valve that I'm aware of in the line. And I'm just thinking that on a hot day, if the tank gets pressurized, my pickup tube, everything's in there just like stock, that this thing might start to siphon and start draining fuel out on the ground. And I definitely don't want that happening. So I'm going to devise a plug. I'm going to chop this off right here, clean it out with some brake clean, and I'll put it like a bolt with a head on it, so maybe in the future somebody can go back to a stock fuel pump. For some reason they would do that. And I'll JB weld a bolt into the end, and then I could just shove this back in the hole, seal it. The challenge is this little plastic clip, mine was brittle and it just broke. And I ended up going to the Ford dealer this morning, Groove Ford here in Denver. It took them a while. They couldn't figure out what part number it was for this clip, but I'm sure their mechanics come in and it's so brittle they break these all the time, but they couldn't find it. So I spent like a half hour in there. So if you are doing this project and you want to cap this off the right way to do it, then you'll need the part number. And the part number is N806191S1901. That's going to save you a lot of time. Get one of these plastic clips because I bet you're going to break it. This nylon just gets real brittle after so long. So here is my plug ready to go that'll seal the end of that hose up. So the next step is I got a whole pile of tie wraps here. Tie wrap up the harness and the fuel line. Make sure it's not up against anything that's rubbing. Also, one little tip, they give you two types of these quick fittings that go into the existing fuel connector right here. And don't ask me how I would know, but there's the wrong one. I used the bigger one thinking that was the one. It was actually the smaller one on my truck. So make sure you check what size is going to go into your fuel line that goes up to the fuel bowl. Put it on, and then absolutely make sure you put your safety clip on there to hold that on like that, and should be good to go. One of the last steps, make sure you change the fuel filter. After going through all this, putting the FASS system on, you definitely want to replace the filter. It's not going to do a whole lot anymore, but anyway, make sure you change that. So the next step, the last step before I put the filters on, is I need to shoot WD-40 up into the suction side of this pump, and that'll lubricate the pump. Just like you do on a turbo on a car, that when you first install it, you manually want to put oil in the top inlet and then spin it a little bit before you hook it up finally, and then wait for the oil to come up. So I guess I got to do the same thing here before the fuel eventually sucks through the system and then starts working. So that's what I'm going to do next. Time for the filters. So this is the PF 3001. I ordered a couple on Amazon as a backup. I'll put the links in the description for everything. But this is going to be the water separator. And they ship it with a metal ring on here. And this is the O-ring that's going to go up onto the suction side up here. And they put a little wire ring on it, keychain, so it doesn't drop down inside. So every time you get a filter, you get a new O-ring. So I'm going to go ahead and butter it up a little bit with some oil, just some motor oil, like so. It's a good thing to do on all your O-rings. Lube them up a little bit, and then I'm going to place this over top. So if you don't do this, put that new O-ring on there, you're going to have suction and cavitation issues. All right. So let's go ahead and get this on here. Again, put some motor oil around the O-ring too on the top of the filter. You don't need to fill up the filters with any fuel, like sometimes when you do an oil filter, you want to fill it up before you put it onto the engine. So what we're going to do is, since this has return lines on the pump and then also in the main fuel bowl, we'll just fire this up and let it run for 10 minutes or so pumping, and it'll circulate back into the fuel tank and fill up everything, fill up the filters, and then fill up the fuel bowl, since I drained that when I changed the front filter. So just do this hand tight, and after it's running, we'll check for leaks. And what's nice too, you can't mess this up. They have a diagram on how the pump is and where the filters go. So now this is going to be the air separator, I would assume. Get that good and lubed up. And this goes, as the diagram shows, my pump's facing forward. This is the 3002, and this goes on to the front side. And this is going to be quite the setup. This is one cool project that I've been waiting to do for years on this truck. And let it flow. Now I would think it's going to change in tone here. Get that clicked on there. It helps if you grunt. I think I'm going to get some t-shirts printed up. There, it clicked. Make sure this is snapped on. You don't want to be sitting on the side of the road because this connector came loose. And then I'm just going to tuck this up in there best I can. The excess harness. And that should hold it. All right, it's changing tone right now on the pump, so it's filling up. So there's the completed installation, all tie wrapped up, nice and neat. Checked everything for leaks. It is running, you could probably hear it. And I hear the return flow into the main tank off of the return line, which is right there. This is going to the engine, and then that's going suction from the tank. So also check the front fitting. Let this run another few minutes, and then we're going to fire it up. Wait for the glow plugs to go out. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and let that run a bit, but let's go ahead and wrap up the video. Like I said in the beginning, I searched high and wide and down low on the interweb and for YouTubes on how to put this FASS system in a 99 through 2007 Powerstroke Ford, and I couldn't find anything anywhere that was really good. So, but there is a PDF on the website, FASS's website, FASS.com. I'll put the link in the description for the PDF on it, but there are many things in there that I had to figure out that aren't in the PDF. So hopefully this video will be helpful. Please check out my playlist on all my other projects, solar, my camper remodel, my other diesel, my Cummins, my car restorations. But please like, share, and subscribe, and let's go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks for watching.